Next to last.
Next to last piece of business. Let's hear what's next.
Paper number 118, tabled until this meeting, order that the Finance Committee meet with the Executive Director of the Redevelopment Authority relative to the Malden Hospital site. Councillor Matheson.
So the sponsors to this are Councillor Kinnon, Councillor D'Angelo, Councillor Matheson, and I will just reintroduce the paper, and I know that we may have some comments on it. So we heard from the Malden Heights group earlier. They would like to see something less dense than what is being proposed by the site owner out there in the former Malden Hospital site. I have to agree with them, being the councilor of that ward and worked so closely with the residents on this issue. I have a petition with well over 100 residents that would like to see the city more involved in this process and not have terms kind of dictated to it by the one and only project developer that we've heard from the parcel owner in the last nearly a decade. So in order for the city to carve out any kind of green space or be a participant in this process and negotiate with the parcel owner, it would begin with a cursory appraisal. The Finance Committee had voted unanimously to ask the MRA to perform that appraisal. They've gone out and got the services of an appraiser that the city has used in the past, someone very professional in the area, and they've quoted us a price that the MRA board will be voting to fund subject to the approval of the City Council. So we have a motion, I believe, to approve the funding of this appraisal. Who would be the mover of that motion? Councilor Kinnon, seconded by Councilor D'Angelo.
This was tabled last week.
It was tabled. Councilor, I didn't see a light. And now I do.
Before we start making motions, John, let's be completely honest now. I asked for a table. The gentleman couldn't make it this week. He's coming next week. So before, and all I had was questions was on the contract that says eminent domain and specifically 60 units, and I wanted to make sure everything we're doing for is covered, John. That's all I asked for 1 week. It was tabled last week by this body, and I'm not trying to delay any more tactics.
That's fine, Councilor Spadafora. You have the floor.
Well, my question is, and this is my concern, this document that I have in front of me, which I don't know if any members of this council had, spells out certain conditions that I don't think would matter. So all I asked was last week is, we can have this gentleman in, and if this appraisal is good for what the intent is, and I completely agree with you, I have no problem going forward. The problem is I think there are certain things in here that it doesn't cover. It might not be good going forward. That's all I asked. He's going to come in next week, I believe the 23rd. We can ask him all the questions, and then we can take a vote. I have no problem with that.
I just, following up on, before I speak, I'll go to other people who have requested time. Councilor D'Angelo.
Well, that was going to be my question, was I thought we were getting a status update. So if he is coming in next week, then let's just wait till next week.
Yeah, I heard the withdrawal. That's fine. I did provide information for Mr. Forster, I believe his name is, to you, Councilor, and I did alert the director of the MRA with the city planner and the city engineer who are working on those parameters. But that being said, this is appraisal that's needed in order to have a friendly negotiation. I don't think we're necessarily going down the road yet of any kind of eminent domain taking.
But it says it here, John. That's my problem, too. It says right here.
Councilor?
The intent of the use of these appraisals is to make a fair market value for both in the purpose of eminent domain taking. So we're putting this out here, and I don't know if it covers this. And then there's certain things in here which is due to the lack of reliable third-party estimates. And I know everything's going to be scoped, but it also says we're not going to deem this the environmental or any remediation. And then it goes on to say.
Councilor, you should respect some of the attorney-client privilege that goes into that communication as well.
How is this attorney-client privilege? How?
You need to speak with the attorney that's involved, the engineer that's working with the appraiser. There's subject matter experts that go into this.
What attorney?
When there's an attorney for the MRA that actually consults on these matters. In fact, when the MRA was dealing with the ballpark issue, and when the MRA was dealing with the River's Edge issue, I don't know that the city council interrogated the appraiser that the MRA brings in to do that kind of diligence, but an eminent domain taking would require a second appraisal. This is only in order to get a value of property, in order to have a discussion. And clearly, you want to speak with the appraiser and get some more information. I can fully appreciate that. That's why I provided all that information for you to reach out to him. And I know you weren't in the Finance Committee meetings because you weren't able to attend those at the time, but I'm not sure that we want to bring him before the council for an interrogation by the council is on the methodology that gets used in an appraisal, but I think you have some legitimate questions that you need to work out. So I'll give you the floor.
So first of all, I do not believe this is public. We're putting we're asking the MRA to fund a study that says specifically eminent domain. So if you're telling me this is a attorney-client privilege and you're an attorney, I would want their attorney here next week, because my intent was not to interrogate somebody. When they put in a document, John, okay, that says post-taking appraisal needs an issue, and it basically goes on to say, we're going to need another appraisal. So what is the $25,000 covering? It's like we're wasting money. If we need 100 to do it right, let's talk about 100. That's all I'm asking.
You need to have two appraisals for an eminent domain taking.
So
we haven't reached...
Are we taking it by eminent domain?
No, sir. We have not reached that point.
But this is requesting that, John.
He's letting you know that this would be a step one appraisal.
Okay, well...
And that's something that I think that you would learn by working with some of the folks that have already put some effort into establishing these parameters for an appraisal.
That's fine. I still would like the gentleman, Mr. Foster, if we can do it publicly, I think we have to do it public, because if we're going to be taking, and I'm not opposed to it, but eminent domain requires us to have funding mechanisms ready to go, and I don't know if the council's ready to do that at this point. I'm not going to hide behind a meeting or with the MRA. If we're going to do it, let's do it on the floor and have everybody here. I'm not opposed to this, but I want to make sure we're spending our money right. We spent 4 hours debating this budget. $25,000 probably is not going to be enough to cover this. I'm not opposed, and I actually put in an email to you, and I agree. I think the only way we could ever do something up there is probably a joint effort. We probably need method, right?
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah,
but
so,
step one is knowing what the value of the property is. An eminent domain appraisal would come next, and it would be a much more in-depth appraisal. You're right. We're not there yet.
Okay.
But how can we negotiate with the site owner without any appraisal whatsoever?
I'm not saying one's needed, but when I read this, there was a lot of things in here that are carved out that made me very nervous. And all I'm asking for is that individual will come before us, and not the MRA, come before us, because ultimately we would have to take it.
Well, when we first took this issue up, it was an executive session. I think we could bring it back to executive session. But when we do this kind of diligence, for example, in the ballpark, we've spent $100,000 to $200,000 in soft costs with the ballpark, including an appraisal.
Yep.
That isn't the sort of thing that we do out here, because it affects the city's negotiating position. And anything we're going to do over there for the public benefit would require the sanctity of the city's negotiating position. Certainly, if you're going to reveal everything that gets discussed between the attorney and the appraiser and the engineer and how that formula gets developed, I think that would make the project developer very happy, because it would become a very difficult process indeed. We do have someone else that wants to speak, and I want to grant time to everyone who wants that opportunity. Councilor D'Angelo.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make sure we're clear on this. If we need more time to find out, and if we need to adjust language in the contract that we're going to engage the appraiser on, then let's do that. But I think it's premature to talk about any type of taking, and I certainly, I want to go on record now, just to be very clear, am not advocating for that. I don't think that, but this is 16.5 acres in Malden, 18 acres total of prime real estate north of Boston. I think we owe it to the taxpayers to know what we're dealing with up there. So that's my thrust for this. I hope it's not taken any other way. Because here's the other thing. Right now, as the councilor indicated, makes a good point, we couldn't even buy it even if we wanted. So that, to me, is all well down the road. This is an important step to me of due diligence in this process, to know, to have some idea of what, because right now we're going off a record card, you know, and a minor, very cursory review that was done previously. So I think this is money well spent in the grand scheme of what 16.5 acres is worth these days. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll add the alternative to doing some diligence on behalf of the public in this regard means that we're kind of stuck with whatever the site owner wants to send us. And the development that was sent over from the site owner would destroy one of the best communities in this city. It would result in 1,000 daily vehicle trips, 1,000 new residents, 400 new living units. It would bring downtown density in apartments up to Hospital Hill in Ward 3 in a beautiful residential community of single-family houses and only 2 little roads that serve that hill. And the proposal we've gotten from the developer is completely unacceptable. It would require us changing all of our zoning laws. Not only that, even the single-family lots that would be going in there, they violate all our dimensional controls, the lot size, the frontage, the setbacks, even the roadways they provide in their drawings. They're inadequate-sized roadways, inadequate-sized sidewalks. They are cramming stuff up there in that proposal to maximize the value of that site to those developers. And they don't live here, Councilor. We do. We need to be looking out for the residents. That's what this does. It is the basic homework that we need to do in order to have even a voice in this process. If you're not doing that, you're letting the site owner drive the bus. And I'm not trying to punish the site owner. I think there's a win-win here. Hallmark Health has an albatross around their neck with this site. They've owned this land for 17 years. It's been dormant for 15 years. There's a dangerous blight on that property. Anytime you have a condemned building, a dangerous blight in a community, the law provides that you want to do something about it, and we're empowered to do it in the public benefit. Whether that means green space or single-family housing, the way it's zoned, but we have options here. And we can't do any of those options without even a basic appraisal. This is the bare bones appraisal. You're right, an eminent domain appraisal, that might cost you $100,000. I don't know, I'm not an appraiser. I'm not an architect, I'm not an engineer. We have to trust people to do that formula. But I got to tell you, when Finance Committee voted unanimously to get this basic appraisal done, the MRA was about to perform it. The mayor wasn't in favor of it. I think there's a lot of people that support what the project developer wants to do up there, which is a mega apartment complex. But just to finish my thoughts, Councilor, and of course I'm going to give you the time. I'm fair to everyone who requests that time. But I think that if you're going to bat for that development, you'd say, let's interrogate that appraiser. Let's scare him. Let's delay him. And let's bring this out to next year, because if you don't fund this thing so that he can do it over the study, this is a massive, unique appraisal. There's very few comparables to this site. They have to make assumptions. Everybody knows that. But we haven't marketed this site for 15 years the way Hallmark has. They know the value. We don't. This is basic information. It's step 1 in the process. It doesn't mean we're going to take it by eminent domain. But you can't even have that discussion until you do this diligence. After you do this diligence, then we can have that discussion. And an eminent domain taking, it takes 2 appraisals. I think you've been serving on the council long enough to remember River's Edge. We didn't interrogate the appraisers that came in. By the way, it's the same appraiser we used back then. And when we just did the appraisals for the ballpark, we didn't bring them in and interrogate them then. But frankly, Councilor, you got to show up to finance to get the information you're asking about. And then when you ask for a delay for a week, with all due respect to you, sir, because I think you do great work. Your historical knowledge on this council is invaluable to us. But I gave you the information of this appraiser. I think you need to ask some of those questions before you come in and stop pounding the table about the work we're trying to perform here. Now, if you want to delay another week, that's fine. But if we don't fund this thing, and he doesn't have the summertime to perform it, then we're going out to next year. And the only one driving the bus then is Hallmark. And all the residents who have a legitimate desire to add some green space and not to have an apartment complex in their backyard, you're going to stymie their efforts. And that's not fair to them. So that's what I have to say on that. And listen, I'm not trying to punish Hallmark Health. Right now, we're about to go to trial. They brought suit against us. I went in with the health department, inspectional services, we inspected that building. There are a lot of legitimate safety concerns, life safety concerns with that building. And you know, you and I, we drafted a letter together about those concerns. To get relief from that order, they sued the city to get relief. This matter is now going to trial. I think they're motivated to do something with this property, but obviously their interests are maximize the value of that property to them. If you're the site owner, you want as many millions as you can get. But if you're the city, your interests aren't exactly aligned with that. It's not about how much they can get for the site. It's about what's going to be there. What are we going to live with? What's the future of Malden going to be? This is so much more important than switch boxes. This is why we're here. And we need to start talking about what we're going to do about it. And I think that this basic appraisal is the first step in this process. It's diligence on behalf of the residents. If you're not in favor of eminent domain, I respect your point of view. But that's not the dialogue we're having right now. We're trying to get a value of the site. So that's my time, and I appreciate it that I was afforded this time to say what I had to say there. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Councilor. Was there another request for time for a first time speaking? I see two lights. I'm going to go to you, Councilor Spatafora.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I think what I'm trying to gauge, let me just go back to the first thing. The Finance Committee meeting was a 5-0, 4-0 vote. I was 15 minutes late because I take public transportation. Did anybody pass out this before? Did the Finance Committee see this document?
No, I don't believe.
Did you have the document?
It was emailed to me from the...
And you didn't share with the Finance Committee. So they took a vote, which we argue about all the time. All I'm asking is, I had some questions. The vote was already taken. So my only option was, when it came up before the full council, I have some questions. I asked to table it 1 week. Mr. Foster could not make it this week. I had nothing to do with that.
So we can table again.
But wait, and that's all I'm asking. And then what I'm asking too is, the questions here, the full council should know. I'm not trying to do anything in the back door. I'm not trying to delay this. And this proposed development is exactly what it is. It's a proposed development. I'm not saying I'm supporting it, but in the same token is, you would need an ordinance change. And I don't think anybody up here right now is ready to do an ordinance change. So it's not like that is imminent right now. That is not, that proposal is simply, it's just like this park. And I think, to be quite honest with you, they're both in the same spot, because this requires probably $15 million in capital, some way. We couldn't find $500,000 to balance the school budget. All I'm saying, Councilor, is this would be great. If we had $15 million, I would sign right now. Okay? But there's some proposals in here that also require an ordinance change. Because they say in here, cafe and picnic areas, outdoor bandstand, performing arts center, that would require a zoning change.
That's not on the table before us. An appraisal is.
But you brought up the other plan with green space. I'm just saying, you're right, this is not the same thing. So I take offense that I was 15 minutes late to a meeting, that this document wasn't packed up. I am not for Hallmark. I've been in this council 10 years. I am against that. I was against them from day one. From day one. My biggest fear is we can't afford to do something up there, and that's why I think before we start throwing out big words like eminent domain and start spending money, I'm not opposed to spending $25,000. Let's spend $25,000 the right way. I put it in writing, and I'll put it in here. We should call Method in and do a joint kind of like Pine Banks up there. Because other than that, I honestly, and I've said this before, it's a pipe dream. It's a pipe dream. The density I live half a mile away. My kids play in that park. I understand the same concerns, and I'm not advocating for that. All I'm saying is, I get a document that I didn't get a chance to read because I didn't know it existed, Council. I had some questions. The vote was taken. I'm not trying to play games. But I also think this should be done on the floor, not in the back room, because there's a lot of important questions here. I'm going to argue this client, it's the MRA. It's the MRA. We're ordering the MRA to spend this money. So I don't understand how we can order somebody to spend money and it's public, but this document's not public. I don't understand. I'm not, you act like I'm advocating for all I'm advocating was we do it the right way and we make sure we understand what we're spending. That's all I'm advocating.
Councilor, I want you to get the answers. So if we need to table to get those answers, that's fine.
It was tabled.
But time is of the essence, and you have to follow up to get some of this information. Now, I don't know who Debbie Byrd...
Wait. I take offense to that. I am not calling the man individually. It was tabled so everybody here could have the chance to hear it.
That wasn't my understanding of the tabling motion. You said that you needed some information. That wasn't my understanding of it.
Okay.
Is that the motion you're making?
It was tabled last week. It was tabled last week, Counselor. It was
Yes.
tabled last week so they could come
I
before us.
understand, but it's off the table now. We need to entertain a motion.
I make a motion to table till, I think his date is the next Tuesday's date? 23rd? Have him come before I don't care what committee you want to have him come before the 23rd to go through this document.
Okay. On Council Spatafora's motion to table for 1 week, all those in favor say aye. All opposed? Okay, we got through